video. But all right, so if you're ready for scientific notation, you don't have to put an LT sheet here because I'm only using like a small portion of it. So if you want to, you can just put the learning target there. It's EE 3.1. I can express numbers in scientific notation to estimate very large or very small quantities. This scientific notation's doodle notes, I believe, is over in the top crate. But if it's in the bottom crate, I apologize. I think it's the top crate though. So scientific notation. What is scientific notation used for? You can see that I have a picture of the Earth and then the distance between that and the moon. And so it's used for very, very large quantities, to represent very large quantities. And then also a scientist that use microscopes, for example, like a microbiologist, would be using it for very, very small quantities. For example, like measuring something within a cell or something like that. They would also use it for very large quantities if they were talking about like the number of bacteria that they found in something. So scientists use scientific notation to represent very large and very small quantities. All right, and so when you're doing scientific notation, this 3 here represents your number, and sometimes this is actually a decimal, but the number that takes place before the decimal point has to be a number between 1 and 10. It cannot go up to 10, it has to stop at 9, and then you'd have a decimal point, and then whatever digits you might have over here. This here is not an X, that's actually a times sign, so for scientific notation only, we actually use the times sign that is like this as opposed to a dot. And then times 10, because scientific notation is always used with a base 10 here, times 10 to the, and then it's some power. If that exponent is a positive number, it's going to be a number that's greater than 1. It's going to be large numbers. And then if the exponent is negative, like this negative 2 is, it's going to be a number that's actually less than 1. So the negative exponents would be used for very small quantities that are very small decimals. For example, the microbiologist might be using this. Positive exponents here would be for very large quantities. All right, so for example, I have this number right here. Sorry, it's having trouble focusing. I'll look away here and get back to it. Okay, so I have this number right here. All right, to turn this from standard to scientific notation, you're actually going to move the decimal all the way so that it's right between the 1 and the 4 here. You don't have to actually count this by hand the way that they normally show it on videos on YouTube, because we have a calculator button for this. So it's actually the second function, and I think it's the DRG button. It's up near the PRB. Look for the one that has like psi and ENG above it. So you're going to do second, and then I think it's one of those buttons up there. I don't have my calculator with me, I'm sorry. And so you're going to type, you're going to do second and then that button and turn your calculator into scientific notation. And then go ahead and type this number in and hit enter. And it should give you the answer. So it's going to be 1.487914, and then you don't need the zeros there, times 10, and then you should see a little exponent up there. See a little exponent there, and it should be a 12. So this is 1.487914 times 10 to the 12th. Okay, so when you are actually going from scientific notation to standard notation, you need to change your calculator back to the regular notation. And you can do that by doing the clear and on, or you can go to that same button that you used before and go back to the previous settings. So it's not psi or eng, it's the other one. And then you can actually just type this into your calculator exactly as it appears using the caret button. So you can do 4.182 times 10 caret negative 5. and that will give you the answer right there. Okay, so you should see on your calculator that it's 0 point, and then there are 4 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4 after the decimal, and then 4, 1, 8, 2. So there's the standard notation of that. All right. So when you are doing scientific notation, you can just go ahead and use your calculator. When you're going from scientifics to standard, you're going to just go ahead and have your calculator in the regular setting, and then type this in using the caret button. And then when you're doing standard to scientific, you're going to need to change your calculator to scientific notation first, and then you can type the number in like normal and hit enter, and it'll automatically give it to you. The one mistake students make is they sometimes accidentally leave it in scientific notation when they're doing other things, and then you're going to get really weird answers. So make sure you always change it back to the regular notation, and you can easily do that by just clearing your calculator by doing on and clear at the same time, and it memory clears it. You can also just go to that button again and switch it back to regular notation out of scientific. Make sure you don't pick engineering notation. We don't use that. If you are going to add, subtract, multiply, or divide scientific notation, you would need to actually put this in parentheses on your calculator so that your calculator understands this here is one quantity, and then you could multiply that by another quantity, or add that to another quantity, or divide it by another quantity, as long as you put parentheses around the scientific notation itself. So you would need to put this in parentheses on your calculator, which is above the 8 and 9, I believe. And then you could add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Your calculator will be able to do everything for you. If you want it to be in scientific notation, just make sure you change it. I think it's that second DRG psi. So double check that for me. Sorry that I don't have my calculator right here. So there are there's a paper in the crate that was with these notes for you to practice with. The one side is just standard notation to scientific notation and scientific to standard, and then the other side is actually doing operations with it. So again, when you're doing operations with it, just make sure that you put parentheses around the actual scientific notation, and then you can add, subtract, multiply, divide right here, and then go ahead and put parentheses around the next one as well, so that your calculator understands what you're actually saying. And that's particularly important when you are adding, subtracting, and dividing. Multiplying, it's going to